Welcome to a Faithful God podcast. I'm your host, Tammy Rotzel, and today on the show, my guest Jason Clawson is joining me as he talks about how to find hope and redemption in those really difficult journeys in life. So grab those earbuds and your favorite beverage and join me for today's show. Hey friend, happy Friday. Welcome back. I am so excited to have you here. Listen, I don't take it lightly that you choose to show up every week. I truly appreciate it, and I am very honored because I know you have a lot of options out there. So it means the world to me that you choose to show up each and every week. So listen, my guest today is one that I did not know before recording. We met very briefly for a few minutes before we hit record and then just went on with it. But my guest is Jason Clawson, and he actually is with Hope Kit, and he has a story that he is going to share with us. It's a hard and it's a painful story, and it's one, that he really shows us what happens and how we really can find hope and redemption and restoration in those really difficult journeys in our life. Let's face it, something we talk about on the episode or on the podcast all the time is that, it is possible to have peace and pain at the very same time. That doesn't mean we plaster a smile, put a smile on our face, or as Jason talks about in this episode, putting that mask on. It doesn't mean plastering a smile on our face and pretending that everything is okay. That's not what it's about. And Jason's going to explain, and share with us just really how hard and difficult it was for him in his story. But he also shares with us just the beautiful redemption and what came from his very hard journey. And so I will not make you wait any longer on with my conversation with Jason. Hi, Jason. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Good morning. It's so good to be here.
We are on absolute opposite sides of the country, like literally almost to the coast on your side there, but yeah, opposite sides of the country. But I always like my listeners to know how you and I met or how we know each other. And the truth is we don't. This is our first time meeting. I am
Yep.
so honored that you are joining us today. And I just know that this is going to be such a blessing to so many of my listeners. So if you will, tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we'll just kind of get started.
Awesome. I never know where to start with that. So,
I'm sure.
um, I'm based in Utah, so born and raised here, and my background is clinical therapy. I've been doing therapy for 16 years, with people in addiction, people in trauma, people with faith crisis, depression, anxiety. So you name it, I think I've experienced it or dealt with it. But I feel like God has led me to be a therapist, to be able to listen and to help walk that path with me. And it's been hard, but it's been so amazing to have some of the experiences I've had. So,
You know what? I'm so glad you said that because one thing that we talk about a lot in my community is unrealistic expectations. And there's so much, like we have unrealistic expectations about everything in life. And when it comes to our faith walk, so often, especially when you're new in your faith, you think that, oh gosh, now I'm following God, so life is going to be easy and we're not going to have any of these trials and
yeah.
challenges. And that's not the case at all. But what we know is that even in the midst of the pain, the heartache, those impossible situations, we actually can experience peace in the midst of that. And so I really appreciate you saying that because, yeah, it's so true. It's not easy, but it's so incredible to follow God's calling for you, for
Yeah,
sure.
and I think a lot of us out there are dealing with it, whether they talk about it or not. We're all dealing with it in some way.
Yes. Agreed. Agreed. I actually have a membership community called Grow Your Faith. And in this community, just watching these women and all of us, myself included, grow stronger together. And I can tell you the turning points in our relationships in there is when we're willing to be vulnerable
Yeah.
and say, this is what I'm feeling. Because then you've got so many other women in there saying, me too. I feel that way too. And we've just, I think, grown up so much thinking that, oh no, we have to keep it inside. And so it just really makes a difference. And there's so much spiritual growth that happens when you're willing to
Yeah.
be vulnerable and share that stuff. So,
What I've learned on the opposite of a male side is we may
mm,
we wear so many masks, like masks of masculinity,
yeah,
that prevent us from being raw and authentic and vulnerable. And a lot of the men that I've dealt with is they'll wear a mask and they'll keep in these emotions, but the way they manifest itself is they'll be angry or upset or work. Like there's all these behaviors that come out when a man is trying to hold on to those emotions and try to be the strong one or try to be like the tough guy. But the scary thing is it comes out in so many ways, and then the men get embarrassed or frustrated because that's how they're treating women, that's how they're treating their kids. But deep down inside, if we look at it, there's those emotions that are d- underneath that they need space to talk, and they need to have other men to talk to, which is
yeah,
a different place, or they need someone to just listen to them. And then it gives them permission to take off that mask and say, I'm not okay. I need help. And and in those cases, that's a lot of the time where they become open to God and saying, okay, where do you need me to go, or how can I get help? And it's an amazing transformation, but it takes a lot of work to have that happen. Because with a female, like they get in a group and they just naturally do that.
yeah,
But for a guy that just says, I have to be the provider, I have to be the strong one, I have to be the disciplinary. A lot of the times, it's like I got to protect myself so I can keep those responsibilities or my role in my community or in my family. And a lot of time it prevents them. And I think society has created those personas.
hmm,
But what's amazing is you take off the masks
yeah,
in the sessions that I've had, and you have the toughest, the strongest guys that are just weeping in my office. And
mm,
it's so beautiful to see these men be real and authentic and say, I just can't take it anymore. I'm hurting so bad. And and at the end of the sessions, when I've worked with these really raw, just tattooed earrings, and I just embrace them and I hug them, and they just continue to weep because they need that support and love more than anybody else to be able to do what they're supposed to be doing.
yeah. You got me all teary eyed here, Jason. And I mean, that is so powerful. And it is so needed with, just you're so like there was just like a checklist in my brain that just went off of yep, 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 in my marriage.
Yeah,
Whom I have a husband whom I adore, but man, that doesn't mean it's been an easy road. And
yeah,
like, as you're saying all that, one of the things that I pray for regularly is for my husband for someone a good Christian man to come into my husband's life who he can be real with and honest with and just be led to Christ.
yeah,
He is a believer. He's accepted Jesus as his Lord and Savior. But I mean, just to help that relationship grow stronger. So,
yeah,
wow, wow, there are so many women listening right now going, "Oh my gosh, yes, I get it." And what you've done is you've kind of peeled that back for us, helping us see because it can be frustrating when it's like when we see our husbands or significant others, but you just really helped us see that from a different light. So thank you. I appreciate that.
yeah. It's a hard. And I don't think women quite understand. And women get
Mhm.
out women get outlets, they go to dinner, they go play games, they get all these emotional outlets, and guys don't do that. They'll go to a game and they won't talk very much, but they'll just sit there, and it's there's not a lot of spaces where men can talk about it. And it's pretty ironic because I have a friend that has been through a really hard event. And what and, and a little side story was he was driving home with his daughter, and there was a kid that was on a bridge ready to jump into oncoming traffic. And he parked his car, he got out, and he didn't know what to do, except he's a big Polynesian guy.
Uh-huh.
He just held out his arms like this, and he walked towards him, and he's like, Jason, I didn't know what to say except I love you, bro. And he walked and just said, I love you, bro. I love you, bro. And until he got so close where he grabbed him, and then he just held him, and he just embraced him until people came to be able to help him. But what that has inspired him to do, to create a men's group
Oh,
called called Courage to Bro.
oh,
And and this two on Wednesday, he invited me to sit in this group, and it was all men, and
oh.
they were taking off their mask, and they were sharing what it was like to be a man. From I'm struggling with suicide thoughts. I'm struggling with my identity. I can't be real with my wife. And it was so beautiful to watch men just be vulnerable and just authentic. And I was just like, oh my gosh, this is what more men need, a space to be able to talk and process. So it was it, it
100%.
was it was amazing to see this transpire. He's been doing so much work and talking to me from a clinical perspective. How can we improve this? But to sit in this and to actually see that, and and
Oh,
I- and from a therapist, I run groups, so I see it a lot. But in this context, it was, man, the spirit was there. You could just feel it was palpable just to feel these men and
mm.
what they were going through. And these burly men were just crying. I was like, oh, this is so awesome to watch
Oh,
real men cry
yeah.
and say it's hard to be a man. And it doesn't happen enough. And that's what his mission is to do, is to create these chapters. And he's like, I want to create them all over so that they can
Mm.
have these spaces, they can have these places where I can share. And if because a lot of them said, if I share with my wife, I'm afraid that they'll be nervous or afraid or worried about me, or it'll
Right.
impact their relationship. So a lot of them appreciated, this is the group I can be vulnerable and raw and authentic. And it was so beautiful this week.
Oh, I love that. What a like right there. We hear all this mess and chaos going on in our world. And right there, it just proves there's still so much good going on, so
Yeah.
much good happening.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
That is incredible. Well, Jason, you have a story yourself. Quite a story, right? As we
I
all
do.
do. But yeah, you do have quite a story. If you will, just wherever you're comfortable starting, we'd love to hear that story, and we appreciate you being vulnerable enough and honest enough to share that story with us.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. And a lot of what I'm talking about, I experienced,
Yeah.
because when you're faced with a life altering event
Yeah.
and you are sitting in a hospital like I was,
Mhm.
and you're in a waiting room and you're waiting for your wife to be done with surgery, your brain just starts to go in many different ways,
Right.
because you're waiting for what the doctor's going to tell you that's going to alter your life.
Mhm.
And I was sitting there with my wife's parents and her friend and my sister, and the door opens, and the doctor comes in and looks at me and says, "Jason, I'm so sorry. Your wife has stage 4 colon cancer." And I don't think life can totally prepare you for those events
Yeah.
other than just living a good Christ-like helping people life. I mean, that's not going to like make it all better, but like
Mhm.
I think in those events, at least you have some foundational things that you can lean upon, and you have a community that you can lean upon, and that can be very helpful. But I think what you do today is probably going to help you 3, 4 years down the road. So start now to build your
Uh,
community. So
I'm so glad you said that for sure. For sure. Yeah. Don't wait until you have um, a major life event like this.
yeah.
So what was she having surgery for, if you don't mind me asking? And
So
you weren't expecting this.
well, prior to that, she had a lump in her stomach, and
Okay.
we really couldn't find out what was going on. We did some tests and some scans, and there was nothing definitive that it was pointing, "Hey, you have cancer." So we opted to go do surgery, to exploratory surgery, to find out what was going on,
Yeah.
and the doctor opens her up, does a partial hysterectomy, but sees this large mass, and then closes her up and says, "I can't touch that because of the implications." And that's kind of in a nutshell. It was just a whirlwind of tests and scans and doctors and praying and being like, "Okay, let's hurry up and get this done because I got work to do. I got to go help more people."
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
was at the moment I was a clinical director. Just I was engaged in such a beautiful work to be able to help people in recovery and to find their higher power, and it was so beautiful. So in my mind and in my wife's, let's hurry up and get this over with. Like, we got to move on. We got
Yeah.
stuff to do. Let's hurry up. We got to do
Yeah.
God's work, right? Um,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
but but it happened differently. So
Mhm.
I remember specifically when the heaviness of this responsibility landed on me as a father provider. So the doctor came into her her recovery room and told her, and again we cried some more,
Mhm.
but my mind couldn't shut off. It was racing.
Mhm.
The doctor left, and I was like, I'm going to get some answers. So I
Yeah.
literally ran down the hallway after the doctor, and I stopped her and I said, how are we going to do this? Like, what kind of treatment? How are we going to pay for? And I was just like, "Buh, buh, 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 buh." And she stopped me and she looked me in the eye and she said, "Jason, cancer has a way of enhancing your life." And and I went immediately like, I don't want my life to be enhanced.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
want I want my old life. It was good. Like, we were happy and we were thriving. And she goes, "You'll be okay." And I remember turning around specifically, and like I felt like I put on like this 100-pound backpack, and this weight just hit me as the dad, the father. And I remember having this thought saying, every a lot of people need me to be strong. And I remember like putting on this stoic mask and
Mhm.
saying, I'm gonna do this, like I'm gonna be stoic. But
Yeah.
uh, I remember many times, and that this might give some of the female insight to
Mhm.
men, is I remember doing my responsibilities, and I remember taking care of my wife and getting her to bed. I remember we were staying with my parents at the time, and I was helping my boys do their homework and getting them to bed. And I remember my spot was on a couch, and I remember just sitting there, and nobody's around, right?
Mhm.
And I could take off my mask and I could put it on the coffee table, and I I would just cry. I'd just sit and cry myself to sleep. I'm
Yeah.
getting emotional right now because it's so dang hard.
Yeah.
And I remember just crying myself to sleep and then falling asleep and waking up. before everybody else and hurry, put on my mask. and,
Yes.
and then doing it over and over and over again. It's like, it's so exhausting, but like my wife is depending on me. My kids are depending on me, family. So I felt like that was my role and that's what I did. But it's exhausting and it's so hard. And like I said, other things start to manifest itself when men start to hold on to their emotions. So
Yeah.
that's something to keep in mind. But um, that went on for probably about 9 months,
Mhm. Yeah.
and then um, the hard part about this journey was we were giving 2 to 3 years to battle cancer,
Mhm.
and we'd go do the scan, we'd do everything the doctor told us, we'd go to church, we'd pray, we'd do everything that we felt like we to give us a fighting chance. But
Yeah.
we'd go back to those scans, and nothing ever changed. And it was heart-wrenching that no matter what we did, um, nothing improved. So we begin to go, is this our life?
Yeah.
And it turned into, I mean, it turned into some really intimate conversations with my wife about life and about um, other things that were important in our faith. And the hard part is after 9 months, we said goodbye to Valerie,
Ah,
and that was hard because
yeah.
obviously I felt alone. And the amazing thing is people rally around you, and
Yeah.
it's awesome for funerals, and they come and they bring food and they rally. And but guess what? After the funeral, whoever's listening, take note. That's when it really sinks in, and that's where you feel more depressed, more alone, because everybody goes back to their responsibilities in life,
Yeah.
and then you feel so isolated and alone, and the reality sinks in, and then you're like, oh my gosh, I'm facing this alone. And the reality is that's when you need your team, that's when you need the most help, because you're the most loneliest. And it was just I remember laying in my bed, just like, I don't want to go to work, I don't want to do anything, I want to sleep. And then I get this little knock at the door, and I was like, great. And
Yep.
my
Yep.
and my little boy goes, hey dad, can you make me breakfast? And I'm like, yes,
Yeah.
I I will. And
Uh-huh.
I had to get up. I mean,
Yeah.
and many people don't have the option to just lay there and be sad all day.
Mhm.
I had a responsibility to get up and take care of my kids, and man,
Yeah.
that's hard to do on a daily basis.
I have no doubt. I have no doubt. You're grieving. You're trying to be the provider and take care of them in every way,
Yeah.
and including their grief.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah. Yeah. And one my oldest son, he would get really quiet and reserved and go inside. And then
mhm,
my younger child, he was 6 at the time. No, he was 5 and Boston was 11. And the younger one was just angry and yelling and screaming. So I got the two opposite that I'm try to manage me, try to manage. And then on top of everything else, about 9 days, I get a call from my boss that says, hey, hey Jason, I need you back to work. We are struggling. And I was like, are you kidding
9 days.
me? Yeah, 9 days. I don't recommend it at all, but 9 days after she passed, I was like, okay, maybe if I get back and get in the groove and helping things. But the tricky part is you need time to reset. You
Yeah.
need time for yourself. You need some mindfulness. You need some spiritual connection with God.
Yeah.
You need to just clear those emotions that are so hard to and painfully to deal with. And
Yeah.
that's where, if you have people come over, just people sitting and listening to you just babble is gold.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
you don't have to have the right answer. Just let them sit. And it's like getting the yuck out, getting the yuck out. And people will just ramble and ramble, but like that's what we need. But
Yeah.
for me, I going back to work and I was like, I shut it down. So I kept the emotions inside
Yeah.
and I was hoping that by helping more people that it would help me. But man, it was so hard. And um I just um that my that part of my life was so difficult. And if anybody knew that was going on, man, I did so many crying, um, crying in my bed, crying myself to sleep, um, angry at God.
Hmm.
And the questions that I asked God were, why did you do this to me?
Yeah.
Why did you take my wife? Why did we have cancer? And I think this is significant when we're going through a trial of how we talk to God
Hmm.
is we we blame him and we ask him why, and it doesn't allow our hearts to be open for him to teach us or
Mm.
or lead us or inspire us where to go because we're so closed off to what God can teach us. And I felt like for a while I was closed off because I was so angry why he did this to me. And
Yeah.
it's such a frustrating time that and people are probably listening to me saying, "Well, you don't get my situation, Jason." Well, uh, mine was mine was equally as hard as yours right now. So I I feel your emotions. I
Mhm.
felt similar emotions. I haven't felt exactly what you've been through, but I've been in those emotions and they're just extremely hard.
Yeah. Yeah. I've been in those emotions. I've sat there and done the exact same thing. Why did you take this
Hmm.
from me, Lord? Why
Yeah.
would you take this life from me? Mine was a completely different situation, but why would you take this from me, Lord? So let me ask you this. So what advice would you give someone listening right now who is in that space right now? Why did you do this, Lord? Why did you take this? How do you turn the tables and open your heart to allow God to heal you?
That's so hard.
It is, isn't it?
It's so
It
hard.
is. Yeah.
I mean, I think something that you can start to do is start to talk to God differently. And
Hmm.
it's almost like you get to a breaking point where you begin to talk to him differently. But let's change your narrative.
Hmm.
And you might have to say, God, I'm going to do this different.
Hmm.
And then change your questions that you begin to ask God. So maybe it's like, okay, what who do I need to go meet? Or who do I need to connect with? What do I need to learn from this experience? Who are you trying to help me become? So we need to turn, and it could be just slightly opening up to God and saying, okay, open. What can you be to help me? And you be more open and transparent to what God has to lead you. And I would start there, and then I would also start. I mean, this worked for me, but I recommend this to everybody. So in the mornings is such a sacred time. And if you're not a mornings person, maybe do it at night. I love
Yeah.
mornings.
Me
So
too.
I would get up before my kids and I would sit at the kitchen table and I'd pull out my journal
Uh-huh.
and I would just put it down. And remember, I'm a therapist, so I teach all this stuff. But then when I started implementing this, I'm like, oh my gosh, this stuff works. So I'm like,
That stuff I've been teaching.
I really believe it. Um, but I pulled out my journal and this was, I feel like this was golden. So I call it my mindful meditation. And
Uh-huh.
I'm not like tuning out, but
Yeah.
I'd write a specific question to my situation of what I was seeking and what I was looking for. I'd
Yeah.
write the question at the top of the page. I would plug in some headphones and I would find some just soothing, calming, just music where you could just calm, and I would just free flow. And
Yeah.
I felt like I wasn't judging it. I could just let out whatever came. And if you cuss, great.
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
you need that, or and you begin to write, and then at when you feel like you're done, I went back through to see what messages God was telling me. And you could see patterns or things that he was trying to tell you to be able to get your answers. And I felt like this for me gave me the answers I was looking for to how I proceeded in my life. And it was something I look forward to.
Uh-huh.
Um, and it was such a healing moment where, and many times I'd be like, are you kidding me? Whoa. Oh, okay. I guess I need to do that. Okay. But again, that is opening your heart up to God and allowing like the Holy Spirit to lead and guide you. But you got to be open for it. You got to say, okay, I'm going to be open, even though I haven't been.
Mhm.
I'm gonna try this for a couple of days, and
Yeah.
say, God, I'm trying this for a couple of days, and just be 100% all in, so that He can tell you what to do, and He can inspire people to come into your life, and it will be life changing for those that follow through.
Yeah, agreed. I couldn't agree more. And I think it's so important, and I tell my community all the time, we've got to make that little shift in how we pray. And when we choose, we have to be persistent and consistent, right? In our
Yeah, yeah,
pursuit of God and our pursuit of healing and all of that. And even when we don't want to, if we just open up, first and foremost, letting God know exactly how you feel. We
yeah,
don't have to sugarcoat it for him. He understands and he knows we're hurting. And when we allow him, even the tiniest little shifts, we allow him to come in and move in our lives, he shows up big every single time. We can't sit on the sidelines, although it's so much easier to do, to sit on the sidelines and yell, why? Why are you doing this to me, Lord? Why are you allowing this in my life? But when we take that step, just that, even the tiniest step towards him, that's when things start to change. That's when we start to experience the healing. And it's humbling
yeah,
and it's painful.
yeah.
It's not, I mean, growth isn't easy. Healing isn't easy. It's
No,
painful.
no. It's
And
it's very painful.
yeah, for sure. It's not for the faint of heart. And it's not, following God, nowhere in the Bible does it say that when we follow God, it's going to be easy. And it's not. It's the easier way is to keep going and doing things on our own and to turn our back and to go the ways of the world. But to really lean into God, that's it's hard.
Yeah,
It's really
very hard.
hard for sure. So, you know, um, so now you were a therapist prior to this, correct?
Yeah,
You
yeah.
were, yeah, you just said that. I'm sorry. You just said that because you were talking about these are the things that talk to your clients about, your patients about. But so what did that look like as you move on? I happen to know kind of where you are right now, but you did have someone come into your life and that, but what did it look like in the meantime of, like when things started to change and what you experienced with you and your boys?
Um, I mean, it didn't get better right away.
Yeah,
So
for sure.
I
For
want to be
sure.
perfectly clear. Like,
Yeah.
oh, it just opened up.
Yeah.
It was a daily grinder, and I
Mhm.
always say, um, lean into the discomfort because that's when the growth happens. So, and whether it's like, let's take going to church was hard.
Mhm.
I,
Mm.
I knew I needed to go to church, and I would show up, but maybe I showed up for like a small moment and be like, that's all I can do.
Mhm.
And then the next week I go a little bit longer. But what's interesting, and this can help you guys understand when someone goes through the grieving process, I'd show up to church, and I think subconsciously I was looking for the right person to be in my circle. And
Yeah.
people would come up and be like, "Hey, how you doing?" I'll be like, "Good." Got the stoic mask on, be like, "I'm good."
Yeah.
Like, I'm hanging in there. And I learned what to say to kind of move people along that weren't interested in that I wasn't in that what let me back up. That I don't think would stick around and sit in my emotions. So I would just be like, "I'm good, thanks, yeah." And then say, "If there's anything I can do, let me know." But the tricky part when people say that,
Hmm.
you're you're putting that on me to figure out and then
Oh,
and then reach out to you, and that's just like I don't have the bandwidth to do that. So those people that said that, I had a hard time opening up. But the people I really opened up to were the people that just sat there and said, "How are you really feeling?
yeah.
Jason, you're what can how can I be there for you?" And I'm like, "Those are my people." And then I would start to open up and to test and to see if they're willing to sit in those emotions. And if they were my people.
Yeah.
And that's what I was looking for. And that's what I think people that are grieving are looking for. They're not looking for people that just bring over food and just drop it off and say, "Yeah, we're thinking of you." We want people to just listen to our emotions. And that can be such a powerful moment is just listening and sitting in those emotions. I want to go back. I
Please.
think in my journey, I think what's really important was I remember I went back to work
Mhm.
and I went back for 9 months and then it got extremely, extremely hard to a point where I was like, I don't like how I'm feeling. I feel awful and every day is such a struggle. So I took a lunch break. I remember finding myself at a church and I remember pulling out my phone and I text 15 of friends, family, people in my church and neighborhood and I said, "I'm struggling. I would sure love to have you come to my house and and talk." And I sent it and I was like, "Okay, let's see what happens."
See who shows up.
And I went home and all of a sudden I was getting all these knocks at the door and I was like, "Oh no, people are showing up." And then I'm like, "Oh no, I'm gonna have to talk." and
I love
and
that.
but what was so beautiful was I sat in my own living room um, and I began to just I finally was able to take off my mask
Ah,
and I was able to just pour out my heart and I was able to let people in. And I think by being vulnerable and honest, it invited people in that could say and then they could jump in when they needed to. Up until that, they didn't feel like they felt like I was doing good
right.
and I invited them in in that moment I call it my healing team
Oh, I
that
love that.
I've been able to create and develop. But what we did is we created a team captain that whenever I got so emotionally triggered, overwhelmed, or wiped out, I could send one text, one word to
Uh-huh.
my team captain. My team captain would take that and then text everybody on my team. And prior to this, everybody came up with a responsibility, whether they do laundry or whether they do yard work or take the kids for a break. They all had a role that they could follow through with. So whenever I would send my text and share that, people would go into action immediately and they would come take off the stressful things of my life. So I would have my parents come over and do my laundry. Like
Yeah.
I was like, this is awesome. And someone would be mowing the lawn and someone would be texting me uplifting texts. Someone would go take my kids for a couple hours. And what I learned in this moment and this healing team, and this can work for someone in grief, pornography, like substance abuse, trauma, it takes the stress out. And then you're really linking arms with people
Hmm.
and God and
Hmm.
I felt in those moments, I can do this. Nothing is too hard. I can send one text that takes away those responsibilities. And then what's amazing is when I feel strong enough, I can ask to have those come back. Hey,
Yeah.
I can do my laundry now. I'm good.
Yeah.
I can mow my lawn, and then that just empowers me. And again, I felt like at that moment, nothing I can become better, and there's hope. And I feel like that was a pivotal moment. And it took me taking off my mask,
Yeah.
reaching out and asking for help. Not a lot of people do that, but
Right.
I took the courage to do that, and people responded in my community that allowed me my first step back into finding hope again, and that was so crucial in my healing process.
I honest to goodness, I'm sure there are others out there who have done something similar to this, but I mean, this is huge. And
Mhm.
the fact that because so often when we see someone going through something like this, we don't know for sure what to do. And being able to do that and to take that off of you, it's really interesting because as you were talking about all that, I was thinking about the brain and how our brain works. I've really been diving into this myself physiologically, what happens when there is trauma.
Uh-huh.
And you mentioned the word trigger because you go about days where okay, maybe you're doing a little bit better than something happens, a memory, something happens that triggers that or sends you reeling right back as if you had not, I I think of it as, you take what is it, one step forward and two steps back, or whatever the saying is, and you feel like, gosh, I'm so defeated, but it's just your brain actually does need um because you're working overtime, your brain, I'm trying to say this in the right way or explain this correctly, but your brain needs that relief from those types of things so that you can start to heal, obviously emotionally,
Yeah.
heal your heart, um and your brain from this, like literally your brain from this trauma that's happened. And I don't know that you ever 100% heal from something like this. I can't imagine that you do, but being able to have these people to do that in your life, I think that's incredible.
Yeah.
That is just a beautiful, beautiful thing.
I mean, creating that also helps me to be able to share my
Yeah.
emotions. And people
Yeah.
often say, "How do you know you're getting better?" And
Mm,
the thing I came up with was when you share an experience or you go through an anniversary, I feel it's the intensity of the emotion is decreased.
mm,
So you're
mhm.
like, if I talk about my wife today, I'm not a blubbering mess, and I don't need to call in sick and say I need a time. I
Yeah.
can I can be sad, I can share emotions, but I can reset and I can get back. And I feel that's part of the healing process. And that's when you know people are getting better, is
Yeah.
the intensity of the emotion is not so overwhelming. So
Oh, that's really powerful. That's really powerful in so many different situations when you're thinking about trauma,
mhm,
forgiveness, a past hurt, obviously grief. That's huge. The
yeah,
intensity of the emotion
yeah.
lessons. Okay. That
And
yeah. Go
and
ahead.
and a little bit to that is I also learned through this experience that literally the opposite of grief and depression and sin and loneliness is connection.
Yeah. Yeah.
and and without connection, there is no healing.
Yeah.
Because
Yes.
think about when we make mistakes and when all things go bad, we get on our knees and we connect with God, right?
Yeah.
We're like, sorry, I've been so distant, but I
Yeah.
really need help right now.
Yes.
We connect with God, and when we're at our breaking point, we reach out to people because we can't do it ourselves. And that can be the healing medicine as well, is connect. And again, going back to the being a male, we're not very good at connecting,
Yeah.
or we're not very good at just, hey, bro, like I'm ha-
Yeah.
I'm having a good day. And it's like, suck it up. Let's go watch a game, and we're supposed to be okay with our emotion. It just doesn't
Yeah.
happen in our culture, and it needs to change and shift.
Yeah, agreed. 100% agree with that. I do think we need to change it. We definitely do. We need to change that for sure. So, you are actually married again. So tell us about that.
So that is God's miracle
Yeah.
working in my life.
Yeah.
And what's amazing, I don't tell this a lot, but
Mhm.
shortly after my wife passed away, I remember I was in the car with my boys,
Mhm.
and one of my oldest, Boston, leans over and goes, "Hey, Dad, when are you gonna start dating again?"
Really?
And I was like, I don't want to date. Like, I'm still grieving, but I was like, I
Yeah.
don't know. And then he said something that was very interesting. And I thought he was so intuitive. He said, "We really need a mom." And oh, I
Wow.
was like, okay, but I'm not just gonna go and go to
Right.
the go to the grocery store and grab a mom and say, "Here we go."
Yeah.
I was like, gosh. And I reflected on that many times, like he really needs a mother figure to help him. And so obviously I didn't start dating right away. It took me a while, but
Yeah.
oh, here's Bo- Boston would kept bugging me. He's the oldest one, and saying, "Hey, Dad, like, why don't you get on some dating apps?" And I was like, "Nah." I put them off for a long time, and then finally one night I said, "Hey, let's do this together." So he
Yeah.
actually he actually filled out my profile to
Is
start.
that
I was like, it was cute, and it was a way connecting, but that was really cool. But
absolutely?
I
Absolutely.
I I I just went through the dating. I remember going on the first few dates, and all I talked about was my deceased wife, and I was just like, man,
Mhm.
I need some work to do.
Yeah.
But I finally connected with a girl named Kirsten, and
Uh-huh.
her story is also unique because she lost her husband to cancer as well.
Okay.
So, as you can imagine, we really connected on so many levels, talking about caring for the spouse, going through cancer. And I think we were most emotionally mature to
Mhm.
be able to have open and honest conversations. And I think that's what allowed us to be able to grow our relationship. And she was up in Idaho living with her parents, and I was here, and we literally talked over 60 hours before we met in person.
Oh, I love that.
I know this because she's in HR, and she put together a spreadsheet and documented it. So
I
funny.
love that.
But we figure that's certain amount of dates. So, uh,
Yeah.
but when we met, it was just like something that was just we knew we were meant to help each other, and our relationship grew really fast, and we got
Mhm.
married. We got married last January, so we've been
So,
married almost 2 years. Hmm.
oh, that's awesome.
And
Congratulations.
thank you. And we feel it's our gift and our opportunity that God has given us to be able to teach people about hope and happiness and how to
Yeah.
get through hard things. And
Yeah.
um and you know what, having God give us that would have been great.
Mhm.
And we were okay with, we have two boys and we have this, but God has a way of blessing our lives whether we want to it or we know it.
Yeah.
So Kirsten, she married Cody that had two girls of her own. When he
Uh-huh.
when he passed away, she felt like God like really took being a mom away from her life. There's limited conversations she has with those girls, and she was always sad. And doctors throughout her life said you'd never have kids. And then last year,
Oh,
some miracle, we were able to get pregnant.
oh my gosh.
keep in mind she's in her 40s. Like
Uh-huh.
you don't just, hey, let's go have a baby.
Yeah, yeah.
And we our miracle baby named Macy was born last December, and
Oh,
and has been medicine for our soul. And it's been, what's beautiful is it's taken, like, here's Kirsten's life, here's my life, but there was still felt like we had to, it wasn't complete. And then this miracle baby has just brought us so much closer together, and like it feels more complete as a family now. And it's like, oh my
oh,
gosh. I was like, okay, now we know we're not going to put anything past God,
that's right.
because
That's right.
he knows what we need. He knows how to help us. And then I also go back to what the doctor said in the hospital of cancer has a way of enhancing your life. And
Mm,
now I could be okay with that.
wow.
After I've climbed the mountain, look back and go, oh, I see why I need to do. Oh, okay, that's why that needed to happen.
Oh my goodness. Wow. Wow. That's one of those things I am going to be thinking about all throughout the day today. I mean, that to be able to look back on that and go, whoa,
Yeah,
okay, I get it now. I
I
get it now.
I
Yeah.
bel I believe I'm in a spot where I can say my challenges of life have been my most prized possessions,
Yeah.
because it's helped me become who
Yeah.
I am, and it's helped me to do so much good in the world, and it's such a blessing.
I honestly, I couldn't agree more. I feel the same way about my biggest challenges as well. And it's so incredibly true. And that's something we talk in the community all the time, as I kind of mentioned earlier, but is learning how to find peace in the midst of the pain
Yeah.
and being able to look back and see that, oh, God had me this whole time.
Mhm.
Maybe didn't feel like it,
Yep.
but he had me the whole time.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So, Jason, tell me about Hope Kit. What is this? How did it come about? And yeah, tell me all the good stuff.
Remember when I was talking about being at the kitchen table and getting those answers?
Yes.
So after that, this is where God spoke to me. He told me some things that I need to follow, and follow my heart and listen to God. So shortly after the intervention that I had
Hmm.
with my healing team,
Yeah.
I decided to quit my job and take the summer off. And I felt like I needed to reconnect with my kids and become a dad and create some happy memories that were sustaining. Because thinking about death and cancer, like it, it wasn't making us happy. So I
Yeah.
took the summer off. And then one of the first things I did is I sat at the kitchen table, and I said, "All right, boys, Dad's gonna have the summer off. Let's make a bucket list of things that we're gonna work on." So we crafted this long bucket list that we reached out to social media, and we had people be involved and connect with us. But one of the pivotal things in that was create a lemonade stand. And we made a lemonade stand because we wanted to raise money, $100. That was the goal, to create some hope kits. And the hope kits were to deliver to people that were going through cancer, lost a loved one, to just to give them hope.
Yeah.
I I figured, let's give our mental head a break from what we're feeling, give an emotional timeout,
Yeah.
go do some good, and give us a break. So we thought, let's go do some service, and it was amazing. So by the time the lemonade stand was done, we raised $1,500.
Oh my goodness.
and
Oh my gosh.
and my son after said, "We're rich. Let's keep doing lemonade stands." Uh,
That's his dad's new job. You
yeah,
can retire completely.
but I said, we're going to make more hope kits. So we made 25 hope kits, and we threw it out on social media, and we began to deliver these to people. And it was so amazing to watch
Mhm.
people's response. to be in that space, to be able to listen to them and say, I get it. Life sucks. And
Mhm.
my kids were talking to their kids, and I'm like, oh my gosh. I walked out of there saying, I want to figure out how to do this for the rest of my life because it was so life changing. And
Yeah.
what's really cool, and I don't get a chance to talk about this as well, is it really inspired my boys um, because they rallied behind it, and they would go to the grocery store and they'd be thinking about things that they could put in these baskets with people, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And then
Uh-huh.
through this process, a lady from Virginia reached out and said, hey, I need a hope kit. And I was like, I can't drive you there. So we designed a box that we could ship out, and we shipped it to this lady, and she was so grateful and so happy. And then shortly after, my son goes, hey, Dad, I have a goal I want to do. He says, I want to see if we can send a box to someone in every state, all 50 states. And I was like, in my mind, I was like, I don't have time for this. Like, what, what,
Yeah.
what, what have I created? So,
I love it.
but I said, okay, all right, buddy, let's go for it. And we went on this journey. We threw it out, and last year we delivered the last box to Delaware, and now there's a box in every state in the United States, and it's like we
Oh
have
my
been able to help and give influence, and they have a little piece of my wife throughout the country,
God.
and it's just like we did it, like, and now we're on a mission to be able to help more people because that's what God wants us to do, and that's the right thing to do. So
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
today I created Hope Kit that has these boxes that we send out people that are grieving, people that are diagnosed with cancer, and more recently we created one designed to help people with mental health. And
Oh,
it's just like, all right, my calling is to give people hope again.
yeah.
And I get to do that, and it's a lot of work, but it's my passion now. So,
Oh my goodness. And going back, what did that doctor say to you?
yeah,
Cancer has a way of enhancing your life.
yeah.
And
I
well, I was going to say, I think I know I've found again and again, it's something I talk to my community about is that when we're struggling in those hard times, when we turn our focus and put it on God, when we turn and we say, Lord, how can I best serve you? And you just put that into action. Like that is faith in action. That is hope in action. That is love in action. And oh my goodness, this is huge. How can we get a hold of these boxes? Because I know every one of my listeners is thinking, I know someone who I could send a hope box to.
Awesome. Let's change the world.
For sure. 100%.
We can put it in the link,
You
but
got it.
if you go to hopekit.com,
Yep.
then you can find the boxes there. So,
I love this. I absolutely love this. And I'm actually going to reach out to a good friend of mine who she actually owns cancerbomb.com and she helps people through that diagnosis and what to do like logistically, mentally and all of that. And
yeah.
so I'm going to let her know about this too cuz she's going to want to get her hands on these boxes as well. So this is incredible and I just want to thank you for your willingness to show up and say yes to God because like you said you're thinking oh my goodness I don't have time for this and how many times have we all thought the same thing. I don't have time right now. I don't know how to do it, right?
Yep.
I bet
Yeah.
you didn't know how to do all of it when you first started it. You
Nope.
don't, right? God does not call the equipped, he equips those he calls. And
Uh-huh.
wow, what a beautiful testimony to your wife and to, gosh, and also to your boys. Like that is so dang cool. That is so cool. So, okay. So you said hopekit.com,
Uh-huh.
correct?
Yep.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
All right. And I will put the link in the show notes and all of that. But, is there anything else, like one other piece of advice that you'd like to give? You've given us some great advice so far. So that's totally fine. But if there's anything else that you'd like to wrap up with.
I always finish with connection, the opposite of grief. And if you're struggling, rethink your connections to God,
Yeah.
your community, your faith, people in the workplace. And I don't think everybody is ready for you to open up to them.
Yeah.
And so it might take a couple of times to really think about who I'm going to open up with. Because the worst thing you want to do is just open up and they're like, oh, that sucks. Good luck. And then you
Yeah.
close that heart because it takes so much effort to just go, here's my heart. But being careful and prayerful about who you connect with can be very influential in helping your healing process.
Yeah, agreed. Agreed. That is so smart. And I always, say like that's when we sit down and we start asking God, Lord, please bring the right people into my
Yeah.
life. And this is what I need. That I need that. And he promises to provide everything, not just financially, but he promises to provide for us in every way. And so making that ask and, letting him know I need someone in my life to open up to.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that is absolutely beautiful. So Jason, I know that you are a therapist.
Uh-huh.
Um, and I forgot to ask you this beforehand, but I know we met in the podcast community on Facebook. So do you also have a podcast?
I haven't started it yet.
Okay. Okay. So I'm excited. Like while we were talking, I was thinking to myself, I'm hoping you have a podcast because I'm going to be telling my husband, I'm going to be telling my boys. So when you start that podcast, please, please, please reach out and let me know because
Okay.
like I think it is going to be something that I know my boys, it'll be very, very good for all of my guys. So yeah, well, thank you so much, Jason. I really appreciate you. I really appreciate you pouring into my community today. I know that this episode is going to be a favorite. And yeah, I'm just so happy to meet you. This is really, I love that we can connect. Here we are on opposite sides of the country and we can still connect. And I just am so grateful for that.
So it's been so good. I've been filled with the Spirit and being
Good,
and I'm
good.
ready to take on this weekend because of this conversation.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you, Jason.
You're welcome.
So, listen, wasn't that a great episode? Oh, I absolutely love Jason. I wish we lived closer to he and his wife because I would just love to just hang out with him. He just has so much great energy and so much just a love, such a deep love for God. And it just shows in everything that he does and throughout our conversation today. I know you felt it too. So I just love, when we hit record on these episodes and to see how the Holy Spirit moves in these shows it's absolutely incredible. And it takes me days to process our conversation just because it was so good. And I always start every episode. I start out before I hit record, whether I'm by myself or with someone else, and I just ask God to guide our conversation because it's all about him, right? And I want to make sure that I'm bringing you what you need and he knows what it is that you need. So it's just really important to me. And I know this conversation blessed you today. I know there were some aha moments for you. And I know for some of you who are grieving right now, I pray, and I know Jason does too, that this bless you. I pray that it gives you some hope in this really difficult time. And I just pray that you turn to Jesus, just like Jason said, turn to Jesus and just change the questions, right? Change the way you talk to God and just invite him in. You don't have to open up 100%, right? God's going to do all the work, but we've got to take that step and let him in. And so my prayer for you is that this episode is helping you do that or will help you do that. Listen, you've got to go over and check out Hope Kit. Isn't that a beautiful story? And who doesn't want to just shine these, right? Spread this all over the world. I mean, what a beautiful, I just love it. It just brings me so much happiness. So go to hopekit.com. If you're out riding around, don't worry about it. I'll put a link in the show notes. And then, friend, I will meet you back here next week with another episode of a Faithful God podcast.